Let's bring in Joseph Bahout to talk about all of these developments. He's the director of Islam Affairs Institute for Public Policy and International Affairs at the American University of Beirut. Professor, thank you so much for being with us. Let's just talk about what's happening in Lebanon right now. We're seeing these Israeli strikes targeting financial institutions that they say, the Israelis are saying, is linked to Hezbollah in terms of financing Hezbollah. Obviously, this is a marked shift away from purely targeting military sites, purely targeting Hezbollah military sites. What does that mean, and what does that tell you about Israel's strategy going forward?
Thank you for having me. Good evening. Actually, there's nothing really new. I mean, it's only the widening of the Israeli air bomb campaign that has been started maybe 2 months ago with the killing, the targeted killings, and then the pager operations, and then the ongoing striking campaign. I think we could have seen it coming. Israel is widening the circle of its targeting. I think it's now targeting the civilian infrastructure of Hezbollah, and then probably later on the civilian infrastructure of the country itself. The aim is actually very obvious. It's to really push the Lebanese government and then the Lebanese society to quote-unquote distance itself and maybe rebel at some point against Hezbollah in order to obtain a ceasefire or a completely new security arrangement, the like of which the American special envoy today, Amos Hochstein, was bringing on the table to the Lebanese officials. So I think that we have to expect for the coming 2-3 weeks until at least the American elections, a widening of this Israeli campaign that is now hitting, as you said, the financial infrastructure of Hezbollah, maybe tomorrow the civilian infrastructure, not only of the party, but of the country itself.
Yeah, I mean, it is important to note that Hezbollah is, of course, deeply entrenched, deeply linked with the Shia community in Lebanon. And so when you move away from just sort of military targets and military strikes and you start to target financial institutions, what sort of effect and impact does that have on Lebanese civilians?
Now, the intended effect by Israel is, of course, to drive a wedge between the constituency of Hezbollah and the party itself, and gradually to push these people to say the Hezbollah and this party has led us to a sort of foolish adventure, etc., etc. However, the unintended effect is manifold. First of all, I don't think that these people will distance very easily from Hezbollah if they don't have another platform to land on, and this is something that the Lebanese politicians and political class has to think about. And second, there are the collateral damages of all this. You know, you have today in Lebanon 1.2 at least million displaced who are living in the open air in Lebanon, in all villages, in Beirut, in the capital, sleeping on sidewalks, etc. And I think that this is potentially putting a sort of very high pressure on the Lebanese society. And I think that the risk, and maybe it's something that Netanyahu himself is expecting because he has talked about it in one of his statements 2 weeks ago, the risk is to see the country drifting towards the seeds of a new civil war, the like of which its history has been through very often, unfortunately.
As you point out, Amos Hochstein is in Beirut. Obviously, he is very committed to working on some kind of formula that is going to create not just a temporary ceasefire in Lebanon, but a permanent ceasefire in Lebanon between obviously Israel and Hezbollah. He also talked about this idea that merely committing to a previous UN resolution simply wouldn't be good enough. A lot of people are saying that you have the likes of Netanyahu, who really deep down is not interested in any kind of ceasefire because it doesn't benefit him politically. So therefore, what is the right strategy for the US to be pursuing in terms of ending the conflict in Lebanon diplomatically?
Yeah, you know, Amos Hochstein's visit today to Beirut is probably the last move by this outgoing administration. We have elections in 2 weeks in the US. So I think Hochstein brought with him one of the last attempts by the Biden administration to put a halt to the war between Lebanon and Israel, or between Hezbollah and Israel. I'm not sure that, first of all, this attempt is very serious, I would say, because it included some conditions that I think the American party knew the Lebanese government could not accept, at least until now, with the prevalent balance of powers between Hezbollah and Israel. Second, I think Hochstein, I mean, the U.S. administration knows very well also that Benjamin Netanyahu, is really not interested today in a ceasefire in Lebanon unless or until he has succeeded in radically changing the balance of power and the conditions on the ground, which are far to be actually changed. So I think that this was an attempt. It's to be saluted and to be commended, but I think that this attempt will unfortunately join other attempts at ceasefires that were vain and non-conclusive.
Right, Joseph Bahout, appreciate you coming on the program. Thank you so much for being with us.